So yeah, so there's all these people around me lately talking about relationships, breakups, and all sorts of issues about overwhelming their partners with their intensity and all of these wonderful things that gifted people have to deal with, right? So so it came to my mind one morning, okay, I'm going to talk about giftedness in relationships. So in preparing for the talk, I was thinking about, what are the most common questions that I've heard over the years from gifted people. And so I made a list, and I think they'll all hit home for you guys. So the most common one I hear is, where could I find a gifted partner? And then, well, the reality is nobody says the word gifted, but, where could I find a partner that thinks like me, right? What should I do if my partner isn't gifted? Meaning, what can I do if my partner doesn't understand the way my mind works? How can I handle my high standards and my high intensity in my relationship or in a future relationship? And how can I keep from overwhelming future partners or partners, right? And then the final one is, how can I feel satisfied instead of bored or frustrated in my relationships? Okay, so these are the common questions. Do they sound familiar?
Yes.
Yes. Right. So I'll let you ask yours after, but I was thinking about, what is the most comprehensive advice that I would give to somebody or to a group of people asking these types of questions, and what's the sort of root of the advice I've given all these years in relationships and that I've of course had to practice myself. And so the talk is about appreciation tonight. I'm not going to talk for a very long time, but a little bit. So to share this nugget of wisdom with you, this talk is about appreciation. So typically you would expect me to say, you need to learn how to appreciate your partner, or maybe cultivate an appreciative attitude toward the world or to other people, or so on. And actually I'm going to start much closer to home, and I'm going to talk about self-appreciation. So my best advice in relationships and dealing with giftedness in relationships is full self-appreciation. So the issue is, we would think, okay, so we have to appreciate other people in order for everything to be zen and peace and harmony and love and all of that. But the problem is, many of us don't come into our relationships already fully appreciating ourselves. And so what happens is that this non-self-appreciation gets sort of pushed out, like we try to sort of export that as a job to somebody else. So it's really hard to appreciate somebody else when we're not fully feeling appreciated, right? And we're looking to that other person in our lives to fully appreciate us so that we can fully appreciate them, and it's not coming back to us, right? So it's an old wisdom, so I'm not saying anything new, right? But it kind of starts at home. The appreciative process starts at home, closest to us. So I was thinking about sort of a metaphor for this, and I was thinking, if you picture yourself in a garden, let's say, and you go up to a lovely rose bush, and you look at the rose bush, and you look at each branch really closely. So you look at this one, which has lovely blooms, and this other one, which only has thorns, and this other one, which only has buds, and another one, which is probably dying and brown and about to fall off. Each of those branches represents then a part of ourselves. And, I don't have to spell out the metaphor, right, that you can look at a whole bush and it looks lovely, a whole rose bush, and it looks quite lovely. But if you start looking at the individual parts, some parts might not look so good, right? And so the idea becomes to really look at the full plant, to look at the whole thing in its entirety, and not to be piecing yourself out. And in coaching, a lot of times I talk about fragmenting yourself out into these parts that you judge as good, the blooming, wonderful rose branch with the roses on it, the beautiful roses, that's the good branch, right? But the other ones, let's kind of hide those away and not look at them and pretend like they're not there. So the issue becomes then we try to hide these parts of ourselves. So for gifted people, a lot of times that's hiding the intensity, that's hiding the, the nonstop thinking, that's hiding the nonstop ideas, that's hiding these parts of ourselves that we don't really, appreciate and we don't really enjoy. Some of us suffer a lot from our intensity, right? And so that suffering is even one of our branches. And a lot of times we want to hide that suffering from other people. So that comes about sort of naturally because a lot of times we find ourselves, it's not very socially acceptable to be suffering so much from your own self, right? So it's hard socially to say to somebody, I'm causing myself to suffer right now. So that's one of the things that we would hide away. The intensity of our need for appreciation or need for profound connection, that's not necessarily something that's socially very acceptable. Wanting to be that intense with somebody, oftentimes that's looked at as a little strange. So we kind of hide that away. So these are all the things that all the branches that are, let's say, not so beautiful, and we hide them away, or we don't feel like they're so beautiful and we hide them away. So then the problem is we get into a relationship, and what we've done for ourselves by hiding part of ourselves away is that we've created a secret hope, because that stuff, none of those branches disintegrate into the ether, right? They're all still there. And the problem is we get into a relationship and those branches come back out. We can't hide them from somebody who's really in our intimate lives. And the thing is that even if we try to hide them, we do have this secret hope that there's going to be this person who comes into our lives and sees the full us and just appreciates everything about us, right? And we push that as a standard then onto our partners. And then that's where things start to go wrong. This can also go wrong then, of course, in dating, because even just in looking for a partner, because if we're planning to find a partner who has that much ability to see us, to see the full us, and to love the full us, the bad branches and all, well, we're going to keep looking forever, maybe, right? Especially if we're hiding that side of ourselves, even from ourselves sometimes. If we're rejecting an aspect of ourselves and then we are looking for a partner who will accept that part of ourselves, well, we're going to look, well, for the rest of eternity and not find it. So that becomes a source of intense pressure in relationships, and it's something I've seen again and again in the relationships that I've been a part of via my coaching. So in some ways what I'm talking about doesn't have anything to do with giftedness. I mean, it's a standard issue. You have to accept yourself to be a good relational partner. The giftedness just adds on this extra dimension, that it's hard sometimes for us to manage our own minds. So then, bringing that into a relationship, that's just other things to potentially judge oneself about and try to hold back on. Sorry about my neighbor who is making lots and lots of noise up there. The question often is, well, isn't self-appreciation, isn't that like a sort of selfish way of looking at things? Isn't all this focus on oneself a bit too much? But the issue is that if we don't have this first, it's never something that comes out of a relationship. So a lot of us hope that a relationship will help us to appreciate ourselves. In some measure, you can expect that from a healthy relationship, that it helps bring out a good, your good sides. But it's never going to be a substitute for your own self-appreciation. You can never expect that from a partner. So in relationships, I often talk about the authority problem, and this shows up a lot in relationships. So this shows up when we are sitting in the passenger seat of our car, right? And then we're looking for somebody. We don't want to get in the driver's seat and make our own decisions about our own life. We want approval from somebody else. And so we sit in the passenger seat of our car and we look around, will it be him? Will it be her? and we test people out and we put them in the driver's seat of the car. Or if you're in a long-term relationship, you put your partner a lot of times in the driver's seat of the car and you say, go. And then, well, the partner drives you where the partner thinks you should go or thinks you want to go. And then we say, no, no, you're going in the wrong direction. No, you're doing it all wrong. And this is the core of the authority problem. The refusal to really take responsibility for one's life and one's choices and who one is, and giving it to somebody else as a role, and then, of course, rebelling against that. So this is something I see all the time. So I say to clients a lot, all right, so you're going to have to work to get out of your adolescent self, you know, you're going to work to have to learn to grow up, and accept that you have to make the choices about what's going to happen in your adult life. If you want to do a crazy career, you have to take the responsibility for doing that. You can't wait in the passenger seat and hope that somebody's going to come and finally say, yeah, you can do that crazy career. I give you permission. I'll take you there. That's not going to happen, right? And what's even funny, so it could be career, it can be, you know, personal expression, it can be lots of things. But what's funny to see is that, you know, with gifted people, you often don't see people that just love to be told what to do. So it's actually very funny. I mean, not haha funny, but sort of sad funny to see the kinds of circumstances that some clients get themselves into, because, you know, they're sitting in the passenger seat of the car thinking like, I want to do this and I want to do that and here are my big plans for life and so on. And then, you know, then just refusing to move over and get in the driver's seat and go ahead and do that thing. They give me all sorts of reasons why they can't, because their partner won't let them, because their partner doesn't believe in them, because they can't find a partner, and they could only do what they want to do with a partner. So there's these, you know, there are these sort of themes of just sitting there and just like a teenager, right? No, I'm not going to do it. But then you have, so if you're like that, you're naturally going to attract somebody who is willing to come in and tell you what to do with your life, which is the other side of this unhealthy story, right, with the authority problem. But so you're going to attract somebody who's willing to be your driver. So that's already a problem, because you shouldn't really be attracting people who want to drive your car, right? Your partner should really be a passenger sometimes, not even all the time. And so you're gonna be attracting these people, and then you're naturally gonna refuse to do what they say. So this is a huge source of conflict in a lot of the relationships that I see. So a lot of times I see these two, you know, people kind of stuck in an adolescent drama where sometimes one is driving the other person's car and sometimes the other one is driving the other's car, and everybody's refusing to take real responsibility, you know, for their adult choices, for their adult self. So this, like I said, this can be career, this can be personal expression, this can be about families, in-laws, all sorts of things, right? All right, so let me make sure I'm not missing anything that I wanted to include here. So the big,
Jen?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just if we have questions
sorry.
that come up while you're talking, should we just jump in, or should we chat them to you for later, or
That's a good question. What do you all think? Because this will help me decide, because this is beta testing, right? Like, so do you, because I was trying to decide, like, do we do a talk and then questions at the end, or?
I've been taking notes and writing questions to myself, which may come back later on in terms of the discussion, so yeah. That's what I'm doing.
So maybe
that's probably. Oh.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
I was just gonna say that's probably a good idea, so we don't derail the you know, the topic overall.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it like that. And I probably have, I don't know, maybe 5 more minutes of things I want to say, and then we'll be ready to take questions. Okay? Thanks, though, for asking. Okay, so the big question, you can write this down, is why be in a relationship? Why do you want a partner in your life? So this is like top importance. Like, if you're gonna think about being in a relationship, ask yourself why. It's not just because people do it. Not just because, well, maybe it would feel good, or maybe I'd like that, or isn't that what everybody does in society? No. The question is, why do you really want somebody in your life? why, and even more specifically, why are you inviting somebody into your life? Because in a relationship, it is a true invitation, right? You're inviting somebody to share your space, to share what it means to be you. So why are you doing that? So the common things that I might hear are, I want to grow together with somebody. I want somebody to, with whom I'm a mirror, so they mirror me back to me and I mirror them back to them, and we grow together. I think that those are very, very good, not moral judgment good, but those are very healthy goals, for a relationship. But then the question becomes that we have to ask ourselves, if I want a person to mirror me back to me, but I don't accept myself, I can't get mad at what the mirror shows me, right? So if the mirror shows me non-acceptance, then I can't get mad at that. So we have to be really honest about, if we want to grow with somebody, for example. If I want to grow with my partner, but I refuse to let myself grow because I sit in my passenger seat and complain that nobody will let me drive my own car, or it's too hard, or people are going to judge me, or whatever the case might be, right? Then how am I going to expect myself to be able to grow with my partner, or how am I going to expect my partner to pull me along? It's not essentially his job or her job to pull me along, right? So we have to be honest with ourselves about why we're in a relationship, and we have to take responsibility then for what we're doing. What is our intention for being in the relationship? And what are we willing to ask from a partner? I mean, this seems like, these questions kind of seem like, well, okay, kind of platitudes. Like, you got to think about why you're in a relationship. You got to think about what you want from a partner and all of that. No, but I mean, I'm really serious. Like, to take the time to sit and think about these things and really define them in your mind. Because when you define them, then you can actually structure a relationship in a healthy way. So, like, you can know that if I want to grow with my partner, I have to be willing to let myself grow, not be telling myself I'm not allowed to, because I might overwhelm him, because I might, whatever, because I'm ashamed of my intensity, or whatever the case might be, right? So one of the titles that I wrote, just to follow along, to make sure that I kind of got all to the points that were in my head, was that I wrote Outsourcing Self-Acceptance. And basically you can imagine what goes under that title, which is you can't outsource self-acceptance. There's only one person in this world who can accept you in terms of self-acceptance. And if it's true that the world is a mirror, right, and your partner is a mirror, then there's nothing that you can do to sort of outsource that. So then how do you not, how do you avoid doing that? And that's this sort of rosebush analogy about seeing yourself as a whole and not seeing yourself as these fragmented good parts and bad parts, right? So now you can think about your relationships, right? Call to mind some of the relationships you've had, current or past, right? Or even you can think about your search for a relationship and start to ask yourself if this standard, this sort of attempt to outsource self-acceptance or self-appreciation, had to do with some of the problems that existed in those relationships. Hoping that somebody would see you more than you see yourself, or would love you more than you love yourself, or approve of you more than you approve of yourself, or give you permission to do things that you wanted to do, even when you didn't give yourself permission to do those things. Okay, so where does this all come from? Why do we do this? Why do we not let ourselves sort of, go forward in the way we want? And why are we ashamed of the intensity and so on? This is what I talk a lot about in coaching, so a lot of you have heard this, because if you've been in a coaching session with me or a mentoring session with me, I've talked about this probably. But most of our parents probably didn't even know what giftedness was, and most of society doesn't know what it is, and most people don't know how to deal with it, including ourselves a lot of the time. So it's natural that this sort of holding back and not giving oneself permission and so on is learned. It's a learned behavior. And so ideally, right, we would have gotten all the encouragement we needed to love ourselves and appreciate ourselves, and everybody would have appreciated us when we were growing up and all of that. But if it didn't happen to you that way, it didn't happen to a lot of people that way. And so there's really no shame in not having gotten that. The real pity would be in not learning to give it to yourself now. So, if you never learned to ride a bicycle when you were a kid, it doesn't mean you can't learn now. It might be a little more difficult now, but you can learn it. And of course, that's what a lot of this community is also about, helping to give opportunities for learning that as a community. All right, so sort of some of my final thoughts were that we should, what can we actually look for in a relationship? What can we hope for from our partners? And so I hinted at it before, saying a mirror. So a mirror for us, which is sometimes great and sometimes hard to look at, right? But we can hope for that, and we can hope to grow together. So we can actually hope that somebody appreciates us, as long as we're appreciating ourselves as well, and gives us room to grow. But none of what they give us should ever be considered a substitute for our own self-appreciation. So I give on the handout that I'm going to share with you after. I'm going to give you, and if you've been with me in coaching at all, then you have read these articles, and so you'll just look at it and by osmosis, right? Like just figure it all out and have all your answers and all your questions answered. But I'll give you some links to things that you can look at in terms of cultivating a sense of self-appreciation. So the things we talk a lot about in coaching is our values. So really understanding what you care about, like what do you really care about in life? Because if you don't know, it's going to be really hard for your partner to know, because your partner's not a mind reader, and it's probably pretty likely that your partner won't value the same things exactly as you do. Maybe some things, but it won't be the exact same. So if you don't know what you value, very, very difficult to help somebody else value it with you. Your gifted mind. So if you don't know why your mind works like it does, if you don't know why you're overwhelmed when you're overwhelmed, if you don't know why you have nonstop thoughts, and you don't know you don't have any tools to work with that, well, how do you expect your partner to know why you have those kinds of thoughts? How do you expect your partner to know how to deal with that when it shows up, right? So learning about your gifted mind and learning about what that entails for you and how to have better control over that. And then, of course, personality preferences, right? So are you more introverted or more extroverted, more logic-oriented, more emotions-oriented, and so on. Once again, if you don't know it about yourself, it's really hard to control your creative process and to control your relational process. And once again, then how is it possible to ask your partner to do that for you if you don't know how to do it for yourself? So these are the standards that I basically say they solve every problem, right? But relationships as well. So essentially, excuse me. Sorry. Essentially, it becomes really about seeing yourself as this whole. So a whole made up of, your mind, your emotions, the way you think, the way you look at the world, your values, the things that you can control about yourself and the things that you can't control about yourself. And you see that as a whole, and you say, like, this thing, what I am, is worthy of being loved, starting with me. I'll go first. So whenever I talk about leadership, it's always this idea, I'll go first. It's not, come on, everybody, do what I want you to do. It's, this is what I believe in, and I'll take the first step. So that applies very much here in terms of the relationships that you want to have, because it's about you saying, okay, I will see myself as a whole and not fragment myself out and hate some parts of myself or hide some parts of myself. but I'll be here, present, right? So on a sort of more daily level, that translates into practices like meditation, introspection, all the same things that I always talk about in coaching. Reflecting on yourself, contemplating things. Also talking about this stuff with trusted people. So like, this isn't like you have to be perfect and then, you know, present yourself. This is like talking through your process, talking to friends, talking to mentors, talking to a coach. You don't have to talk to your partner about all this stuff all the time either, right? Like, that might be overwhelming. So you find the right mix of people to talk to about these things. So if your partner doesn't want to talk about in depth about, right, all your contemplations, find somebody who does. There are a lot of people in the world who do want to talk about these things. Me being one of them. I might not want to talk about the weather, but I really want to talk about, you know, your inner personality process. So this points to then a last point that I'll talk about, which is the high idealism. So how can you deal with the high idealism that comes with, I want to find one partner who can give me everything. They can give me intellectual stimulation, they can give me sexual stimulation, they can give me the intimacy that I want, they can give me everything I want. Okay, I'm here to tell you, you can't find it, right? That's where your fantasy... Yes, I do. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, but I'm not here to say you're not allowed to fantasize. You can fantasize all you want, but at some point you'll notice that you're becoming self-destructive, right? So then the question is, how can you use your high idealism as inspiration? You might want to write this down. Inspiration rather than a standard. It's not a standard to think that's actually going to happen. It's for inspiration toward something. So, you know, whatever we do in life, we're inspired towards something. Usually, it doesn't turn out to be the thing we're inspired toward. But it turns out to be something more than we would have done if we hadn't been inspired toward anything, right? So you use your high idealism as inspiration, and this goes across the board, not just in relationships, but this is really key in relationships, because and I say this, of course, in career as well. You can expect, and you should expect, a higher than 50-50 ratio of happiness in your relationships. But don't try to go above 80-20. No, just don't. Because you're hurting yourself if you do that. Even I can't be 100% of what I would like to be for myself. So if I can't be that for myself, how in the world could I ever expect a partner to fulfill all of that for me, right? So this is about appreciating, and once again, this is where you see, like, high idealism, it's not, you know, the branch to be hidden away. It's a branch to be used consciously to understand that it's a very inspirational branch of your rose bush, but inspirational is the key, right? So you can use that to make your relationships more inspired, more creative, more lots of good things, but not perfect. All right, let me see if I missed anything else, but I think I'm done. I can hear all sorts of throat clearing, which probably means you all have lots of questions. Yeah, I had other things to say, and like, you know, maybe, you know, sometimes if it's too crazy, if you really can't be yourself with a partner, you really can't, okay, then leave the relationship, right? Like, if you're totally self-appreciative and you reveal yourself and you're, like, abused, manipulated, okay, obviously don't stay in the relationship, right? But I think whatever your relational issues are, and whatever the future of the relationship is, or you're thinking about getting in a relationship, this issue can resolve a lot. And it resolves a lot without any discuss. You don't have to discuss. You don't have to tell your partner he has to change. You don't have to do any of those things. It's here. It starts here, right? Okay, so thanks for listening. I'm curious to hear your questions. Joe, we'll start with you maybe. Is your question still valid?
Sure. Well, yeah, some of them you did answer, actually. I think probably the biggest question, there's this traditional ideal of a relationship as finding somebody who completes you.
Yeah.
That's like that metaphor. And so I wrote down the question, like, because you said, don't expect that your partner will provide something more than you provide to yourself and for yourself. And so I was like, wait, but isn't that the whole completing you
Yeah.
aspect?
Yeah.
But then really, I mean, I maybe that metaphor, maybe that idea of a partner completing you is just invalid. So I don't know.
Well, I think it can be true in some ways in terms of like you can have a partnership that's really functional because one person is more, let's say, emotions oriented and one person is more logic oriented. So in some ways you can complete each other in terms of your outlook on life and your perception. Like even if you have one gifted person and a relationship and one non-gifted person, there can be a lot of benefit there. It can be hard too, but there can be a lot of benefit in terms of one person just being less complex and being simpler, and one person, then seeing things that the other person doesn't see. Because sometimes life is nice when it's just simpler. I mean, all of us know that. Sometimes you just want to turn it off and go to sleep, right? Or turn it off and have a nice dinner and not think anymore. But right. So sometimes it's really nice to have the balance between the two. So in some ways that's true. But in terms of the acceptance question or these sort of self-love questions, you can't find somebody who completes you. You can find somebody who shows your self-love back to yourself. But I don't, from my point of view anyway, you can't find somebody who completes you like, oh, I love everything about me, but I hate that thing. But luckily, my partner loves that thing. I mean, maybe you'll get lucky, like in the movies, but.
So like maybe in some aspects, but not across the board. Like everything you hate about yourself, they'll magically love all of that about you.
Yeah, you might get that would be the high idealism I was talking about. Right?
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Ricky, you had some questions.
I do.
Did I answer them?
Yes, I thought it was beautiful. I feel lucky too. And I think in my relationship with my partner, what I love about this one with my husband compared to like a boyfriend I had previously is that we don't expect each other to make each other happy. And people always think this is the weirdest thing when I tell people that, because people think that's the first thing you do for each other, right?
Yeah.
But we expect unconditional support and acceptance and love from each other, but love, like, I have to love myself to make me happy. I can't expect him to make me feel joyful if I have a shitty day. I have to do something about that. And that lack of expecting that from each other takes away so much friction as well, especially because I am so emotional. So I have moments in a day that I need someone else to make me happy all the time. And this is the first relationship in which I don't rely on anyone else to do that. Like I know now that comes from myself. So you answered a lot of questions just by pointing it out. And I also realize now that whenever we do have friction, it's because I have trouble accepting my intensity. When I don't like something about him, the thing is mostly that I don't like my response to it. And then I feel guilty afterwards, and then I apologize for how I responded, and I often feel like my own struggle with myself is the only thing, that makes me have trouble with it. Yeah. It's new to me.
Yeah, I know. It's a hard pill to swallow. I've had to swallow it myself.
I think especially also because the high emotion thing is something that I've been fighting for so long, because in society it's not accepted, and I don't want to be this woman that cries, like I always try really hard to be someone else, and it's really new to me to accept that, and especially that part. I think with the other overexcitabilities within intensity, if something goes wrong or there's friction on that part, I'm almost proud now after reading the books about it. Like, that's just me, that's my giftedness, and that's okay, and I feel good with that. But especially the sensory overload and the emotional overload, I have no idea how to accept that in myself to the point that I can communicate that to him. That's really a big part of me. Yeah.
It's really interesting you say that, because that's for me as well. The sensory overload, it's still a source of social shame, and I still struggle to accept it.
Yeah.
And the emotional overload less, but really the sensory overload, that's something that I really, really struggle still. Sometimes it just feels so shameful, like, why can't I just be normal, right?
Yeah. Especially because it almost feels random. It's not always the same. If I have enough energy, if I had enough alone time during the day, I can deal with way more. So it's very unpredictable for myself still. So
yeah, indeed. And I think one thing that's difficult is the communication of it, right? It's because if you're overwhelmed, right, it's hard to, you're kind of in a panic, and so it's hard to say, okay, dear, I'm kind of starting to feel overwhelmed, and I'm feeling like I'm going to go into a panic now, so could you please, it's like, stop singing in my, you know, that kind of thing, right? So that's a huge challenge, right? But I think the daily sort of meditative or contemplative time is really helpful, because you can spend time in those moments seeing not only what irritates you, but really what soothes you. And paying attention to that can help a lot. So that's helped me a lot. Like, I know what to do to soothe myself. Sometimes it's not the most socially acceptable thing, because it's like, I'm leaving the room even though everybody's here at the dinner table talking. You know, but there goes weird Jen doing her weird thing again. You know, but I feel I calm down, I feel better, and then I can communicate. Right? So
that's great then.
Yeah, well, most of the time. 80% of the time, maybe. Thanks, that's interesting. Okay, other questions? Do we have any other questions, like from the other side, the people who are watching this, but we can't see them? Hello, all those people.
I have a question, actually, Jen.
Yes.
I'm still trying to channel this question, because it's very hard for me to put words to it. But thanks again. Well, first of all, thanks for your input in the talk. From what I've heard, I'd say I'm a person who does know or does accept himself to quite an extent already. And I think I'm not one of these people who look for something into someone else, even though I do know that I might not be that myself. So I'm kind of balanced in that regard. I think, however, when it comes to relationships, what I'm struggling with is that, since I know that I'm this still intense person, and I'm not like I'm not like someone who like cries a lot, or who shouts a lot, or who screams around when I'm having a fight or something. I'm very calm. All this emotional stress is going on in my head, and that's where it stays. But I'm having a problem when I'm trying to channel these emotions and this intensiveness that I'm feeling, and I'm trying to make myself understood with really clear words in a really calm way. I have the feeling that
sorry, it's not funny.
It's not, my partner is not kind of processing what I'm saying. Probably, and we still do speak the same language somehow, but what I'm saying is not processed in his mind in the way that it is coming out of me. And then what I'm trying in discussions or in conversations is basically just to get my point through to his understanding, and not being able to elaborate on that point in the discussion. To me, it's like trying to mirror it and rephrasing the same thing again and again, because all my high intensiveness does need to be to be touched on, or to be understood in the thoughts and in what I'm saying. And I have the feeling that I'm very much demanding too much of my partner then in this moment, where there is kind of this alpha, beta, whatever blocking, and like les stores qui se ferment, nothing's going through anymore. This is hard. So that's actually where I'm struggling with. Probably someone else, or you or someone else, can give some healthy input on how to manage these situations.
Well, this shows up with, of course, this high logical intensity, right? Like this need to explain things and have somebody understand the logical structure of your mind. And there's a huge, for gifted people who are highly logic-oriented, it's a huge pleasure in having somebody understand your mind, to be able to, like, reflect that back to you, because once again, we look for the mirror in a relationship. And if that's of high value to you, and if you enjoy that part of your mind and you don't get that mirrored back to you from a partner, you can experience very high frustration, right?
Yeah. Right, yes.
So my best advice, although it's quite counterintuitive, is go find it with somebody else. Stop torturing your partner who's not interested. This might sound, kind of cold and heartless, but it's practical. It's what really works. And so then this comes back to the high idealism, right? Like, and Joe, kind of as you're saying, like, shouldn't my partner be everything to me? Or like, shouldn't he or she just, like, match everything and be the complete me, right? No, not in this sense. I mean, if you have that kind of intensity, it's for sure there's not one person in the world that is going to be able to give it all back to you, or to sort of mirror it all back to you. So the idea then becomes more about finding those mirrors, so to help you sort of experience your logical mind, which is fun for you, finding those mirrors in lots of different places, and finding it with people who enjoy that. So, like, for me, I love to talk about, like, my dreams and what they mean, and my husband's like, yeah, okay. Right. So I don't spend my time chasing my husband around saying, but listen, it's so interesting, it's so symbolic. Okay, I let myself do it like once every 3 months, right? And then I just see he really isn't interested. There's nothing I'm ever going to explain to him that's going to make him be interested in that, because it just, But he's interested in a lot of other things, right?
Yes, I understand that, and I think it's a good input. However, you still reach your limits when you have a discussion in the relationship, because you cannot outsource another relationship to someone else who might like understand you better. So that's kind of the when, especially when you're having fights and when you're having problems, like, I still function the way I function, and he just still functions the way he's functioning. And then you reach the point where then again you're like, oh shit, I could talk. I exactly know what I want to, what my point is, but there is no possibility that he's gonna understand it. So this is kind of the hard thing when it comes like to conflict, right? Because as long as like we're talking about other things that do not concern the relationship, that might work. But as soon as we come to the relationship, then it's getting really hard.
I think if I can respond maybe to that as well, what for me really helped was realizing that I highly value it. If I have a fight, if we have a discussion, the analyzing afterwards is what makes the whole discussion valuable to me. Else it was just a pointless fight. But the whole analyzing myself and the fight afterwards makes it at least a learning moment, I've gained deeper insights into my own mind, into how we work together. And what really helped me letting go of that urge of making that point come across, which it never really does, is realizing that I want that learning moment. He doesn't have the need for that. He wants the hug afterwards and knowing that we're okay again and feeling that love of being able to fight and then feel good again. That's his important moment after the fight. But not the analyzing is not important to him, and that really helped me letting it go of having to do that, as I know that, okay, I really do that for myself, then maybe I do it in my head now. That sounds kind of sad, but I tell myself the whole analysis, and I take out the points that I take home from this fight, and then sometimes I summarize them to him, but I feel a little less of the urge now to make everything come across, because you're right, it doesn't, and it's really frustrating.
Right.
Yeah, and you can try, like you say, Chris, you can write it in poetry, you can send it in an email, you can say it when you're, in a romantic moment, you can say it when you're yelling, and maybe the message just will never, ever get across if you're trying it that way. But I I would have said the same thing that you did in terms of a summary. So like what I recommend to people and what I do myself is if you're out of, like, so if you don't value the same thing as your partner, so like, you know, let's say you want to talk about the logic, so you want to like go through the logic of things with him, then, and he doesn't want to do that, find somebody else. Go through it with somebody else. And then come back and give him a summary. And it's not very, I mean, that's the thing, you got to let go of some idealism there. You have to let go of the romance of sharing your, you know, logical mind with somebody. But you might get a really healthy, functional relationship as an exchange. And I think the point is, you know, once again, why are we in a relationship? It comes back to that basic question. Why do you want a partner? If your top need is, I need somebody to understand my logical mind, well, then you have some, you know, hard questions to ask yourself about the relationship. But I think all of us who have been in some version of a healthy relationship can attest to the fact that it's not always so terrible if you don't have these things mirrored back to you, because it also helps you to reach out to other people and have other meaningful relationships that you wouldn't have if your partner just completed you, right? So there's something crucial that also comes out of accepting your partner and the way that their mind works. But it doesn't mean to negate what you need, right? It just means finding it in a source where it can actually, like, you don't go to the dry well and then kick the well for being dry. You go to the well that has water in it and you get yourself some water and you drink. I mean, again, maybe not so romantic, but true.
It's in a way, it's similar to when, you know, when the family that you have is kind of not really what you need or can't give you everything that you need. You kind of need to go and find another sister or another father or mother or brother, in a way, because what is there in your life that it doesn't satisfy all the aspects that you need covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go, Chris.
Sorry. Go.
I was just gonna say, which my wife would point out, doesn't mean that the original relationship or the original family or whatever isn't valuable. It's just it's not absolutely everything. So, you know, it's like you can still have that core, you know, because I think there's a lot of fear there sometimes with people that I've heard. You know, it's like, well, if you need to get something from somewhere else, then you need to get everything from somewhere else. You know, you're gonna leave, and like, no, they're, you know, just certain aspects.
Yeah. So, in some ways, you know, your life becomes more of a puzzle. Like your social life becomes more of a puzzle where you have all these different pieces, and some give you this and some give you that. And okay, so it's going to sound, you know, sort of magical thinking-ish, but it's not. It's not. I mean, it's sort of toward the Buddhist sense of like accepting things the way they are and seeing things for what they are and appreciating them for what they are. And at least I've seen this. I mean, in my own life, in my own relational life, and in my you know, time with clients dealing with relationships, I've always seen that it does. In any case, it does improve things. Sometimes people stay together, sometimes they don't. But in any case, they can have a much more functional relationship. So I see, you know, a lot of past stuff get healed because somebody's willing to say, okay, so I'm not going to torture you anymore to listen to my dreams, right? Or whatever the case might be. And other positive puzzle pieces come into play, right? That are very fulfilling in their own way. So it's like by sort of accepting that, you give room for other things other really interesting relationships to show up as well. And then you can appreciate what you have, you know, with your partner, but also get your needs filled.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I remember the first time I started to realize that his lack of intensity is not just a lack of intensity, it's also something that I cannot do. Like, he has a stillness and a calm and a mindfulness to him that I can't keep up with, you know, and that really shifted. That made him appreciate me a lot more too, you know, maybe because, I don't know, that was really important to also accept and to appreciate. Yeah.
Indeed.
Jen?
Yeah?
I wanted to bring that question of why you want a relationship. And one of the things I recall, being coached through you is the internal aspect of things and the external aspect of things. And I wanted to also direct that question, why do you want a relationship for yourself? But also ask that question towards the higher purpose of the relationship, what it's for and what it means, to have a different perspective on why you're into a relationship. What are you learning from it? Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, Ricky, is it? It's like when you say you want to learn from it, I mean, that's really the purpose to me. So it's wanting it for yourself, what you want inside, and also what it means, outside of you, even for others, Yeah. I just wanted to point that out, that's all.
It's great, it's perfect, yeah. That's so true. All right, other questions? Joe, how's it going on the other side where people only watch? Are there people there?
I think it's fine. I posted a couple. I just asked if anybody had any questions, and I haven't heard. And I don't really know that I can see who's on there right now. So, yeah.
But like, you can see if they send questions in, right?
Yeah, if they put a comment down, then I'll see it. But so far I haven't seen any.
Okay.
Something else, Jen, that I noted, the high idealism. Use it as inspiration. And I use it also, I added the word, use it as a motivator also.
Yeah.
Because you don't, even as a gifted person, you don't want to sell yourself short.
No.
I personally, you strive for it, and accepting that, you may not get 100%.
Yeah.
But you got to keep going for 100%.
Right. It's not like, just settle for 10% and then and try to make do with it. No, definitely not. And even with the ratios that I'm talking about, 80-20 or whatever, everything's so temporary. The point is 80-20 right now, or something better than 50-50 right now, and in any given moment. And it'll fluctuate, but the point is, to keep it moving. It's not like, okay, so let's decide on a ratio right now and decide how everything's going to be, and then it's going to stay that way. For any of us, that would be like, okay, that would be the death, what did they say, the death toll of the, that would be just, it would be clear that relationship's going to end. Like, if it doesn't keep evolving, if it doesn't keep, moving forward, like, and growing, okay, none of us are going to be interested in staying in a relationship like that. So it's definitely not about some sort of like overall, okay, so let's just decide things are like this, and then they'll stay like this till we're 80 and, we're on our deathbeds. No, it's very much, it's a very active ratio to say, keep striving to make it better.
Another thing that one person presented relationships to me once is in an equation. It's like 1 + 1 + 1. Meaning, it's one individual meeting another individual, creating one relationship, and understanding that equation. And I guess it joins back the question, why want a relationship internally and externally also. Yeah. But it's another way of looking at it.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, so if nobody else has any questions, I wanted to have one question about like potential partners, like not being in a relationship, because that represents a large portion of our people as well. Anybody who has been like looking for a relationship or is irritated with looking?
Me.
Alana. Oh, here.
Yeah, am I? I don't know if I'm muted or not.
No, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have my headphones on, but I don't. I think with my photography business, it's so easy to get focused on everyday life and things I want to do with my life that the relationship thing just sometimes takes a back seat, and I go months at a time not even thinking about it, and then other times I'll think about it, but then I'm like, okay, well, where would I even start to look for someone? So I think that's the hardest part, is that there's no one place that you go, and then you're like, should I just leave it up to fate, and am I just going to meet someone naturally, or should I actually look? And online dating sucks. I have no desire to do online dating. I've tried it over the years so many times, and you can connect with someone online or through the phone, and you can really hit it off, and then you meet in person, and there's no sparks, there's no interest. And that's happened so many times that I'm just like, this is silly for me to be wasting my time doing that. So more time than not, I've probably been single in my life, but it's not bad. But on the other hand, sometimes it would be nice to meet someone, but I can't really. I just don't even know where to start. And without online, I have no idea. So.
Well, and I know you, so I know you're an introvert, right? And I know that makes it even more challenging. I think a lot of times there's a question about sort of intuition in knowing, so who would be like a good partner, like kind of sensing who would be a good partner. And so sometimes I hear from, well, a lot of times I hear from my clients who are single and who would like to be in a relationship. I really struggle to feel a positive intuition toward anybody. So like there's just this sense of a sort of a lack of safety in thinking about dating people. Does that make sense when I say that, Alana? Like a lack of safety, like not feeling like, oh yeah, I'd want to see this person and spend time with them again.
Sometimes, but sometimes I question myself, because as I get older, I think when I was younger I had more ideals of what I wanted in a relationship, but as I get older I'm like, should I just be with anyone? Or should I just, like I know I can be very idealistic, so I'm always open to checking that and making sure that I'm not doing that. But it's, I don't know. Sometimes, like I said, it's just easier to be single and just live my life and be happy doing what I do. Thankfully, I found something I'm passionate about and I love to do. And the thing is that I do workshops, I do art fairs, I meet so many people. And you'd think just naturally I would meet someone, but every guy I meet is either married or in a relationship, and it's weird. And I don't know, living in Detroit, let's be honest. I mean, I don't expect a lot of intuitive, gifted people here in Detroit. And if there are, they're probably mostly women. And it's very rare that I come across a man that is, in that place. So.
Yeah.
Maybe I just need to move somewhere else at some point. Maybe that'll increase my odds.
Right. Maybe. But it's interesting, even like this question of location, as, I mean, I started Intergifted, right? So like people around the world could find each other, and it could be an easier selection process. And it's funny because like the first impetus from Intergifted came from one of my clients here in Freiburg who just wanted to talk to other people, like just wanted to find other people who love to talk about philosophy and stuff, right? And then the second kind of hint for it came from my clients who were saying, I hate online dating. It's stupid. I can't sort through these people, and when I find somebody that's even interesting and all of all that goes with it. And so I thought, how can I help gifted people find each other, right? Because it's a nice way to know that you could at least start to feel safe mentally, with somebody else. So you kind of start on a common ground. So who knows? Maybe we'll invent that part of the site sometime. I don't know, but I don't know even how we would structure that without it being turning into something totally dorky. But if we could try. We could try. No, but I think, I mean, opening up to, because if you look at the numbers, giftedness, like less than 10% of the population, blah, 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 and then you sort that out by age, who's already in a relationship and all of that, well, the numbers become lower and lower and lower and lower. So it doesn't, I think one of the things that I've encouraged clients to do over the years, and I've thought if I was still single, how would I feel? I would really work at not blaming myself for not being able to find somebody, because I think a lot of times the temptation is to say, is there something wrong with me? Is there something like, is something off with me, right? But if you don't find sort of your equal or a person that you feel really like a peer with, then it really might not be your fault. Like, and just that helps, right? It really might not be your fault. Like, you really, statistically speaking, you might have not have met the right match until this point. But now, of course, here we are talking, so anything can happen, right? Yeah.
And when you least expect it, that's usually when it happens.
That's what they say.
Yeah, that's always what they say.
That's always
Don't
what they
look,
say.
right? They always say, don't look, that's when you're going to find them. And I've spent years not looking. And I haven't found anyone. So I don't know. I think that people tell you that just to make you feel better.
Maybe.
Or not to look so desperate that you're trying to find someone.
And there are other people that say, ask and you shall receive.
Right. So you get you get a platitude for every point of view. Yeah. But knowing you, and knowing what you've developed with your career and stuff, I think it puts you in a different relational place. If you would meet somebody that would be interesting, it's nice to know that you're doing something that you're passionate about, and you really, let's say, you're in the driver's seat of your car, so to speak, and that's a really cool thing.
Yeah.
It is.
Just to back up really quickly what Jen said, it is funny because knowing, like I'm in a relationship and knowing myself and my weirdness and quirkiness or whatever, and then like seeing, you just look at the spectrum of people who are married or in a relationship or whatever, and you're like, no, it's not a perfection thing, that gets the so yeah, so it's like there's nothing wrong with you if you're not, because there's
yeah, you don't have to be perfect to be in a relationship. Just ask me.
Yeah.
I'm not in any way perfect.
What I'm also curious about, it seems like with your question and also the responses here, that the goal is to find someone who's gifted too, or at least like on that level. And I think I've always had that idea. My perfect partner would match me, sort of. Mm-hmm. And the love of my life doesn't, and that's fine. And I never thought that was even possible, but apparently there are other things in which we match, maybe it's philosophy on life or how we look at the world or those kind of things, and it's not necessarily the intellectual parts or my emotional parts or actually any of the intense right. parts. And I think that's pretty eye-opening. I wish I knew that before I met him, because I always thought, like, where am I going to find someone too, And this is a relaxing knowledge, sort of, to know. Yeah, but I'm curious what the other people think of that. Like, is that the ideal that you match in that respect, or
no, not at all. I think just because what I'm looking for is I feel like is so rare, because I never planned on having kids, so I knew that was against me. And then because most people want to have children, and then getting married, I was open to it, but the older I get, freedom is so important to me. I don't know if I necessarily would want to get married. I'd be open to living with someone, but I don't know. I think that the older I get and the wiser I get, the less I expect from another person, which I think is a good thing. Okay. But then on the other hand, it's like, well, how low should you set standards? I mean, I know it sounds awful, and I don't mean that like to be some loser, but I mean, it doesn't have to be the perfect person, but then how imperfect are you willing to go? So, I don't know. I haven't found that right level yet, I guess. So. But I appreciate your feedback. I mean, that's good to know. It's good to know that people can be happy together that are different.
Yeah.
Alana, may I ask you a question? In terms of relationship, I mean, there are different kinds of relationship. I mean, you have the long-term, marriage relationships, and you have medium-term, meaningful relationships, and you have, short-term relationships. I mean, do you know where you stand in terms of that, in terms of what you want in that regards?
Oh, gosh. I guess I always had the thought of getting into a long-term one, but that, like I said, that's never really developed too much in my life. And part of it I know was because of some of my own personal issues from childhood that we all are still working on. But that's another thing too, because there are people that come into your life that you automatically dismiss because you're like, well, they're not long-term potential, but they could be maybe short-term potential, but I'm the type of person, I'm just too emotional, or I get attached, and I don't know if I would be willing to get into a short-term relationship. That sounds a little iffy to me.
Okay.
But I'd be willing to be friends and hang out and do that sort of thing. Like I have a lot of male friends, even some that are married that I go shooting with. We go, out taking photographs all the time. So I feel fulfilled in that way. It's just there's no close, intimate relationship there. And, like I said, most of the time it's okay, and I'm okay with it. But on the other hand, every once in a while I'm like, it'd be nice to meet someone. But,
Yeah.
I'm patient. We'll just wait to see if
And life isn't over.
Life is not over.
No.
No, not at all.
All right, so I wanted to make sure, because we have to close shortly, and it looks like, here we go, yeah. There were 2 questions from people that aren't in the Hangout right now. So this one is from Patricia. Hi, Patricia. So do you find differences between men and women? Yeah. I have the feeling that it's easier for male gifted persons in a relationship to find his own space and to rule. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do find it, but it depends on, this depends though. If it's a male-female relationship, then yes, I do find that typically it's slightly easier for the male and in the relationship, but if it's a homosexual relationship, then there's usually one partner that takes on the more female, and then one takes on the more male typical role. So like one person is a bit more domineering or sort of in control or rules more than the other person, and the other person is a little bit more passive. So in any case, it seems to be that there's this sort of energy. So I wouldn't necessarily say male-female, but sort of the roles in the relationship. But in male-female partnerships, I often do see that it is easier for a gifted guy, right? Because like the woman is a little more flexible, kind of goes along with things and so on. Whereas when it's the other way around, and so let's say it's like a gifted woman with a whoever man, it's usually a little bit more challenging. There are still a lot of expectations on women, and sometimes what clients tell me, it's just shocking how many expectations there are on women to be servile, to be there to do all of the womanly things and so on, and sometimes it's depressing. So like there's this idea that the woman shouldn't be so smart, the woman shouldn't be thinking so much, the woman shouldn't be working so much. I know it's 2015, but that's still the reality of it. So yes, I do see the difference, and it's still in favor of the men. So let's see. So Ashraf says maybe his question is better to skip. I don't know why. You're welcome to ask it, Ashraf. I'd be happy to answer. No worries, he says. Okay, fine. All right, so we're about out of time. But this has been very interesting, and I hope that everybody has enjoyed the talk. Any final thoughts? Like, what is your basic takeaway from today? What kind of sticks with you and if it feels helpful to you?
For me, it's just accepting myself and not putting that expectation on my partner. I think that's huge. I mean, that's like the whole rosebush thing. It's very important to like accept the ugly parts, and good takeaway.
Right. Good. Anyone else?
I enjoyed I enjoyed listening to you, just and also the fact that we're all sharing a discussion about it, because I don't really talk about relationships at all. I'm in my own relationship, in my marriage, and I'm fine. But no, it was interesting, and it echoes a lot of things. A lot of things maybe I had in my past. But no, thank you all for being there.
Yeah. Thanks for being there too.
It was really, really interesting. What I really liked is was Ricky's comment on my question. I think that brought me a little further in my reflection. So she's not there anymore, but
thanks, Ricky.
yeah, I'd still say thanks. Just one thing that I wanted to point out in what I came across in my reflection is we've been talking a little bit there also with being as a gifted person, being in a relationship with another gifted person. To me, I'd also see some backsides of that. I'd not be sure if I really wanted that, because I know that being in a relationship with a non-gifted person, there are also moments where this person can really calm me down, can really help me to, like to slow down and like to relax when I'm very intense, and or can kind of, give me a little bit of direction when I seem to be kind of lost in my chaos. So there are moments where I would not like to miss that point as well, even though sometimes then to the other extreme, it becomes hard when you need someone who's just as intense and as comprehensive as you are. So this is just a little bit adding to this kind of reflection we had before.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way you say it, because it's kind of like you're either gonna, in the puzzle, of your social life, you're either going to be replacing, these pieces where your partner can't fill in, or you're gonna replace these ones. So either way, you're gonna be replacing some with other relationships. So if your partner's gifted, then it's gonna be replacing those people who can calm you down, right? And then if your partner's not gifted, then you find that mental stimulation, you replace that with other pieces.
Exactly. Yes.
That's really good. All right, anybody else want to share? All right, well, thanks for being here with me, and stay tuned. I'll somehow send you this this document with the links and the resources and all of that. And then hopefully we'll see you again for our next Support Networks talk. We don't know when it'll be, who will be doing it, but you'll find out soon. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.